So I'm gonna start out by doing my front straps. Now I already got a really rough pattern here for when I cut the little markers out of my insoles. So I'm going to use that as a starting point, and I'm gonna actually just draw it straight onto my leather. So I've got my orange leather here. This strap is about 1.5 centimeters in width, but you'll need to do whatever length you need for your foot size. Just as a quick recap before I trace this out, all I did was I got the rough width that I wanted, and then I wrapped it around my foot and around the insole to get the positioning on the insole, but that also helped me to get the length. So if you're not sure how you're supposed to get your length, wrap it around your foot and see how long it needs to be. And make sure you've got a little bit of extra there as well, just so that you've definitely got enough lasting allowance to wrap around the insole. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm tracing this directly onto my leather, and then I'm gonna add about 5 millimeters extra on both lengths of the strap, and that's going to be a folding allowance because I want to get a nice folded edge on these straps. So I'm taking a piece of scrap paper and my water-based glue, and I'm just going to put a strip of glue right over the top of that 5 mil line that I've drawn on. In fact, because this is quite a thin strap, I'm actually just coating the whole thing with glue. And then once that's had a couple of seconds to dry, we can start folding it back on itself. And if it doesn't stick right away, that is a telltale sign that you haven't given it long enough to dry. So it should now look something like that. And I'll do the same thing on the other side. And after I've finished folding both sides, I always like to give it a little tap with the hammer, just to really flatten it out. You could also use something like this. I find just by tapping it with the hammer or giving it a roll, it kind of gives you a nice crisp edge. Now, to be honest, this would probably go through my sewing machine with lining without taking any of the excess weight out. But in case your sewing machine isn't quite as friendly as mine is to leather, you can take one of your safety beveler blades. I'm just putting a fresh blade in here so it's nice and sharp. And you can just reduce the weight a little bit by sort of shaving the excess like that. Now you want to be careful when you do this because you don't want to go too close to the edge, because then there was no point in folding the edge in the first place. Okay, and then we're going to back it. Now you could use a different colored lining, but I'm actually just going to go with the same orange. I like to do that with straps sometimes. I've just got a scrap here and I'm just putting a strip of it across the longest part, and then I'm going to put a strip of glue along the back of that piece. Now keep in mind, this does not need to be the strongest hold, it's just to hold it in place while we stitch. So placing that down, and again I'll give it a little roll. I just roughly cut the excess out of the way so that it looks something like that. And then we can go ahead and jump on the sewing machine to stitch along the sides. Okay, so I've pulled my sewing machine over and I am just gonna straight stitch down both sides. And I've put an orange thread in the bobbin as well, since I'm doing orange on both sides. Just try and keep your stitch as nice and close to the edge as you can. And also worth mentioning, I don't even bother with a back stitch because it's all going to get lasted under the shoe anyway. Okay, that has stitched beautifully. At this point, I can take my scissors and just cut the lining really nice and close to the edge. Okay, so that quite literally is gonna go inside our little grooves like so, and then it will get placed inside the platform unit like that. So it's starting to look really good now. So that's looking really, really good. I am gonna go ahead and create the other front strap, and then we can get started on our back strap. All right, so I've made my two front straps and I'm gonna pop those to the side. I've also got in front of me a printout of my high heel ankle strap pattern. So I'm going to cut this out and just piece it together so that it's ready to go. All right, I'm pretty sure I want to go on the smallest one, but I like to just place that around my ankle just to be sure. Okay, so there is my ankle strap pattern, and then all I'm gonna do is take my leather and trace it out, remembering to flip the pattern left and right, or upside down to get left and right feet. You'll also notice that this pattern has a folding allowance on it because I am going to fold the edges because this leather's not too thick. But if you are using a thicker or stiffer leather and you just wanted to do a raw edge, which is definitely the easier way to do it, you could just cut the folding allowance off this pattern and do it with a raw edge instead. Okay, and then we'll go ahead and cut them out. All right, so once you've got those pieces cut out, we are going to fold the edges. So just as a reminder, this part is totally optional. If you decide that you just want to do a raw edge, then that is also totally fine. So another reminder is that we have got 5mm folding allowance on the pattern. So if you wanted to, you could draw a line like I am now onto the piece, and that kind of helps you have a bit of a guide to follow so that you know where to fold. I just tend to take the glue and go straight over. And a bit like I did with the front strap, I sometimes tend to just glue the whole piece so that no matter where I'm folding, it's got something to stick to. Okay, so let's get started at the bottom here. I usually just start by getting the edge over, and I like to keep a folding hammer on hand. This is exactly what it's for. As you fold little bits, you can really press it down with the hammer as you go, and then I just really take my time and work my way around the whole piece. So there's that bottom area, and it looks really great from the top side, and I'm gonna keep working my way around. Now, when I get up into the corner like that, I usually just put a little snip in about 5 centimeters deep because that's how far I'm folding. And then that way you can fold it back. Now, Victoria from my team actually taught me this next trick, and it is totally genius. But she said when you get to the very tip of your strap, you don't actually need to fold it all the way around the curve because that can just get so bulky. So if you just bring it up sort of like this without folding the very end, you can leave the very end of it raw, and you basically can't really notice at all once you put the lining on, but it also feeds through your buckle a lot smoother. So that is a top tip. Thank you, Victoria. Okay, so I've got my buckle here. I think it's 10mm, this one, potentially 15. Let's have a look. Maybe it's like 12 millimeters. You always measure from the inside. And before we do anything, we want to first of all make sure that our strap fits through, which it does. And then I've got here a little bit of buckle elastic. Now, I usually cut off about that much. I'm going to take that and I'm going to stick the prong of the buckle right through the center of the buckle elastic. So I'm sort of pulling it through like that. And then we want to place the buckle elastic inside here and fold those edges over it. So we're kind of like trapping it inside. And it's really important that we do this at this stage so that when we put our lining on, our buckle elastic is all trapped in there like that. Okay, so we can take our safety beveler and just take a little bit of the weight out of these straps. Again, don't overdo it. And if you think for a second that you might mess it up, if you're not feeling super confident with this, just skip this step. And I'm gonna go back to my orange, and I'm gonna coat the whole back of this piece in glue, and then I'm gonna back it with the orange in the same way that I did with my front straps. Okay, that is now ready for me to jump on the sewing machine and stitch around the edges. It can be a little bit tricky to get around the buckle, so if you do need to put a couple of hand stitches in that area just to really secure it in place, then by all means do that. But I would do your best on the sewing machine first and then see how it goes. Okay, now as always, try and stay as close to the edge as possible. And I'm gonna start at the bottom so that I can sort of make my way all the way around here before I get to the buckle. But don't be afraid to stop and start if you need to. Okay, that looks awesome. Now I managed to get around the buckle that time, luckily, but sometimes I can't get around it. So if you can't get around it, that's totally fine and totally normal. Like I said, just put a couple of hand stitches in that area if you need to. So now I can go ahead and trim all the excess from the lining. And again, just be really careful not to cut through your stitches at the back on your bobbin. Do take your time to do this really neatly, because this is one of those sort of make or break points of your shoe where it can really look amazing or look not very well finished. So just take your time here. Okay, that is looking really, really good. And just to show you how it works, that will feed through. I haven't got any holes punched there yet, but that will sort of sit on the back of the shoe like that. I just want to quickly talk you through the buckle elastic and another option in case you don't have access to it. I really like the buckle elastic because it just gives you like a little bit of movement when you're walking. But if you don't have access to it, you will need, bear with me one second because I need a hole punch. Okay, so I'll just show you as an example. So if you didn't have the buckle elastic, you could extend the leather area just here, and you would simply punch a hole in the center of it like that. So you punch a hole in the middle of it, and then I've got in front of me just another buckle. It's like this little crystal buckle, and all you would do is feed that through and then place the prong of the buckle through the hole that you've created and send it back through itself like that. So if you didn't have the buckle elastic, you would simply extend that leather and fold it back on itself. So just good to know what the options are. In the meantime, I am going to go ahead and get the other strap to that stage, and then I'll see you in the next video, which will be placing our straps on the insoles.